This is Josh from the Albany campus. And again, I want to thank you for being part of this series with us and reading this book and going through these discussions together. And hopefully you're finding some things that are very practical, some very real things, some things that you can do just to reach out to your community and the people around you. And as we've been going through the book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key, we're going to continue this week with chapters 8 and 9 and just a quick brief discussion of these chapters. And again, hopefully you find this helpful. But one thing she does say in this book, and I just want to quote a couple things here. She says, Christian hospitality cares for the things that our neighbors care about. Esteeming them more highly than ourselves means nothing less. It means starting where you are and looking around for who needs you. And so even as we think about that concept, looking for others, the great commandment of love God and love others more than yourself, it comes down to that in a very practical way. She gives a lot of stories here in the chapter of caring for her neighbors and pilling her cat and helping it, and one runs away, and there's all these different things that happens, but she's trying to love her neighbors in a way that's just very real, very practical, and putting their needs ahead of hers in some ways, but also finding things that you have an interest in, or finding things that you can find in common, but also maybe being interested in something that they are interested that you may not be. And that's difficult sometimes to do. And she talks even there's a lady a friend of hers that's a good bridge person who's able to bridge the gaps with people. Very relatable, can do that. There's nothing wrong with asking other people that have that gift, how do you do that? So like, for example, my wife, Carmi, is incredible at connecting with people. I've seen her connect with people, ask them questions that I'm both in awe and wonder that she asked, and vice versa, that somebody's answering those questions. And so, but she has a way of relating to people and building a bridge that helps to connect them, but also a bridge that eventually they may walk across to meet the Lord or whatever it may be. But there's this community that's built. There's this relationship that's built that is incredible. And so I ask her all the time, hey, how should I do this? How do I ask this? And how do you do that? And, I think it's good. Some of us have great skills and abilities of hospitality and communication and being able to relate with people. And even if you don't, it doesn't mean that you can't do this. We're all called to make disciples. The Great Commission didn't fall short of anybody. It's saying all to make. And so I would encourage you, even as we're doing this and you're trying to find ways to reach out to your neighbors and find interests, it's okay to ask questions. How do I do this? What are some questions I can go in and ask people to find out what they're interested in, and maybe not insert myself in every single conversation? So how do I make it about them? How do I have these conversations and communicate to them in both love and deed? So how do I love them well, but then also have my actions follow? And that's what people are looking for. They're not looking for empty words. They're not looking for us to just kind of go through the motions. They're looking for us to love them in truth and deed and action and word and all of these things. And sometimes it's okay to ask for help. Figure out how to do it and how to do it well. And I think it's important. Somebody had told me this at one point. I know for me, like sometimes when we think about this, reaching out to our neighbors, and like for another example, my neighbor, we live in an apartment complex at this point, and hopefully someday soon we have a house, so pray with us for that. But our downstairs neighbor, when we have people over, she gets upset. She'll pound on the ceiling and gets mad at us. And and I was thinking as I was reading this chapter, she came to my mind as a neighbor with us, and I was like, maybe she wouldn't be so upset if she was on our level. Maybe we can invite her up, and we wouldn't be so loud when she's downstairs. It'd be the same noise in the same room. So maybe that's a way we can reach out to her. But I want to be able to be thinking. I know I've been stirred to get to know people, to relate with them. But I sometimes get overwhelmed when I think of a building I'm in with 10 different people or couples, and it seems overwhelming. How do I reach all of them? And somebody had said this is not no one has to do everything, but somebody or everybody should do something. And so whatever little you can do, whatever that may look like, in playing the long game of how do I do this? And even if I don't get results right away, but as I chip away at my neighbors and show that consistent love that Christ has put in us, that greater is he that's in us than he is in the world, that same love that's inside of us, that Christ has empowered us with, how do we keep doing that in a way consistently over time that may win some? And I was even thinking, we just recently had a memorial service for one of our dear members here in Albany for Colleen Davis, and her nephew-in-law was sharing how he wasn't a Christian at the time, and he would go over to Jeff and Colleen's house for Sunday dinners, and just being around them and watching them interact, eventually he came to faith of just watching their life, watching how they lived, watching how hospitable they were, watching how they loved well, the whole range of conversations that they would have. But from watching them, he was like, there's got to be something to this. And so this is something that we can do. And as we continue to do this in a real way, loving our neighbors, helping them in different ways, inviting them over, like she says here in the book too, she says, there are, of course, other ways you can use your days, your time, your money, and your home. But opening your front door and greeting neighbors with soup, bread, and words of Jesus are the most important. And so there are things here that we can do. There are things and ways that we can chip away and show the love of God and through our actions, through our deeds, through our words. And you may not have that moment like she talks about where they had a snow day and they invited all their neighbors and 25 people show up and they all eat. It may not look like that. So your expectations may not be that high, but who knows what the Lord may do. As you continue to open that door, love your neighbors, even the ones like her neighbor Hank, who wasn't, who ended up getting busted for his meth lab, and there's a lot of things going on there, but they loved him well, took some of the heat from the neighbors but they showed what it looked like to love the unlovely, to love the ones that others wouldn't. And so I want to encourage you, even as we go into this, we're going to go into some discussion questions, and we're going to talk through some of these things. But again, we all don't have to do everything, but all of us can do something. And be asking people, how do I do it? What are some tips? What are some questions? What are some things that I can do? But also, inside of your group, encourage each other to be consistent, to be continually asking, making relationships. And I know it's hard. There's a lot of things going on between, sports and practice and things that you're doing in your jobs. And there's a lot of things that take up our time. But I think we have to prioritize this in making disciples, in loving others, and spreading Christ in our neighborhoods. And so again, I'm grateful and thankful that you've been a part of this. We're going to jump into some discussion questions, and I want to encourage you. If you haven't been reading, you can read this and get caught up, but also just jump into conversation. Learn how we can do this together, and let's love people and love God and do that inside a community. I'm grateful for you all. Hope you have a great night. Thank you so much. God bless.